Welcome back to the channel, guys. The 350 with Vortec heads, tuned port for the IROC, just finally getting unwrapped. So I have it actually in the frame, the K-member, all bolted in, everything. This is a complete motor with wiring harness, everything on it. All the accessories, belt, everything is on it, exhaust. So the plan is, again, I have it on a furniture dolly. It's been on there for a few months. That'll handle the weight just fine. And I have a strap on the dolly so you can pull it from there. So the plan is, I have the car hooked up to the engine hoist. So the plan is to lift the front of the car up in the air, slide the engine on the dolly underneath, and bolt it into the car. So in the back, I have it sitting on tires and a couple 2x4s with some wheel chocks. Now you can use ramps if you got them. I had it set and threw it away, never used it. Anyhow, so I got a chain hooked up right where your stabilizer bar goes in the front. There's bolts underneath. There's one here under the gearbox. And again, the plan is to go up in the air with this, slide the motor in, and bolt it in. I've done it before like that. Works out just perfect if you don't have a hoist. It's a good way of doing it in the garage instead of putting it in through the top. Especially being that I have the trans and everything with it all together. It's kind of tough to go from the top with these. It's much easier to lift the car up and slide it in through the underneath. Have the car up in the air. That should give us enough room to slide the motor right underneath of it and start dropping the car down. I wouldn't recommend you get underneath the car with just the hoist holding it. So for safety measures, get something, some 2x4s or long jack stands in case it falls or something happens. So here we have the motor in position underneath the vehicle. Obviously we'll have to move it back and forth a little bit once we start lowering. So we'll go ahead and start lowering it and see where we need to go with it. We almost have it in position here. Just got to go back and forth with the motor a couple times, line everything up, make sure we're not interfering with anything, breaking anything. So far it's pretty good, so we'll keep lowering it until we fit and clear everything. I got the motor kind of covered up so I don't scratch stuff while I'm maneuvering things around. So here it is, the motor's back in, it's all bolted in. Now what does help is having a couple of jacks. Actually 3 jacks are more helpful. One here on this side, one on the trans, and one on the other side of the control arms or the frame itself. That way you can kind of get it aligned and jack it up. Now I have it all bolted in now, so it's all where it should be. But one of the more important things you want to do is have a jack right under the trans there. If you don't have that aligned, what happens is your motor tilts back too far. It'll actually break the distributor, or the cap at least, or the ignition module. It will break the connectors off of it because the motor leans too far back. So either I would suggest keeping the distributor out, but if you took the motor out in the first place this way from the underneath, then you should have all the correct spacing and everything. You shouldn't have to kind of adjust for everything, and I didn't do that on this particular one. I pulled the trans out first, and later on I decided to pull the motor through the top. But when I got it all together, I want it all going back in as one piece. So this literally takes about 25 minutes to half an hour to get it all together this way. You can keep the control arms on and everything. In my case, I had everything apart just to replace everything, all the bushings and everything. So I did it this way. But this is the easiest way to get the motor and trans in together into a 3rd gen, or even a 4th gen actually is from the underneath. Literally half an hour, you got it all together. Again, 3 jacks will help. If not, if you took it out from the underneath, so you have the correct spacing and everything like that, All I used was their furniture dolly underneath, the heavy duty one. You can get them from Menards or Home Depot. And that's what I had the motor and trans sitting on. This is the mover's dolly that I used, which was able to carry the motor and the trans. And I had it on here for months, and there was no problem maneuvering it around under the vehicle while I was bolting it in. And I just kind of tied a strap to the end of it, like so I can pull it forward, push it backwards, what have you. And I just had a board over it. That's what the dolly looks like. Now in my case, the way I had the back set up, it was a bit too high. But to get underneath the car to do the trans, it was perfect. The trans mount. So again, if you pull it out that way, you would obviously, once you have this underneath your motor, you would space it out properly when you unbolt it, and it should go right back in the same way. But in my case, the way I had it set up this way, with what I had underneath the car in the back, the front just would not go low enough for everything to bolt up the way it should. So I ended up using jacks on both sides and a jack underneath the trans to get that to line up. But I think using something, a 4x or something like that should stand it up far enough. Even if you have that kind of a setup in the back, that should line everything up. But again, jacks will help either way. Nothing's going to line up perfectly. Now, as far as lifting the car with the engine hoist to get the motor in from the underneath, I have the front clip off of it. So I could have gone off of these frame horns in the front here. But I'm kind of limited in the room in the front. So I went to here, right underneath the gearbox, kind of where your stabilizer bar mounts. And that was perfect. Gave me just perfect clearance. And you can see that right on the water pump pulley. Doesn't really touch it. Going in and out. Again, if you got the front clip off, you got the room in the front, you can definitely go off of these frame horns in the front or the bumper mounts in the front. And that's doable. But without the motor in it, the car doesn't weigh much anyways. You can literally actually pick it up because there's no weight in the front of it.